everyone, and welcome to this morning's UBC Talks, which is the third one in the series, and that will focus on environmental data disclosure to CDP. And we are very happy to have you all on board today. My name is Kristiina Paju. I'm from UBC Sustainable Cities Commission, and I will be your moderator today. And I will be joined with Jutta Mäkinen, my colleague, and she will be responsible for the technicalities today. So if there are any issues regarding the webinar software, then she is the person to turn to. So just a few quick words regarding the participation at the webinar. You are all muted, as you can see, in order to ensure the webinar goes smoothly. But we have other options for interactivity for you reserved. You can present questions in the chat or in the questions bar, as well as you can then send us chat messages, as well as answer to the poll questions. So if we continue from here quickly, sorry for the interruption now due to technical issues, but we have the program today. We have 4 keynotes, as well as I will say some words regarding our UBC Sustainable Cities Commission, as well as our cooperation with CDP. When it comes to the UBC, then those of you who are not familiar with UBC, then it is a leading network of cities in the Baltic region and working together to foster sustainable, smart, and resilient cities. And our commission is one of the 7 thematic commissions, and we work with urban planning and urban mobility, water management, sustainable urban mobility, as well as local climate work. When it comes to our cooperation with CDP, then we have been cooperating with them already from 2017. And our role in the cooperation has been the communicating one. We have been tasked with encouraging our UBC cities to join the disclosure process and to share their best practices from the climate change related work, as well as other environmental data within the network. And we have grown the participating cities from 6 disclosing cities in 2016 that were UBC members to 26 in 2019. And let's hope that we will grow that number this year as well. And for 2020, the disclosure period will start as usual from April, and it will end on 20th of June of 2020. We thought that we should have the deadline for UBC cities before the midsummer in order to make sure that everybody will allocate enough time to do the data disclosure due to all the midsummers and holidays that will come up during the summer. So that is why we have chosen the 20th of June as the deadline. Of course, you will be able to submit to CDP after that as well, but then your data will not be included in the reports that are the results of our cooperation. As you can see from the slide, we have published 3 different reports so far based on each of the years of the disclosure and the cooperation. And we think they are a good collection of the best practices from your local context from our cities. So please do check them out. Now, I think it is a good time for us to launch the first poll. So if you can launch the first poll for us. So the question is, has your city been disclosing to CDP before? And you can choose your answer. We will wait for a little while and then we will show you the results. 33% of you know that your city has been. That's good. Good number, but half of you don't know. And 17 knows that your city is not reporting to CDP. Okay. It's good to know. But without any other introductory words, let me introduce you to our keynote speaker number 1, Ms. Catherine Higham from CDP, and she will be telling us about the CDP Disclosure 2020 and what, why, and how. Welcome.
So, can you see my presentation there?
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, all of you, for attending this webinar this morning, particularly in light of everything that is happening in the world. I'm sure this is a difficult time for everybody. So really appreciate you giving us your time this morning to learn about the CDP Cities program for 2020. I also want to thank you, Christina, for introducing the cooperation between CDP and UBC, and particularly for showing the reports that UBC has been producing on an annual basis. Using data produced to CDP. I really recommend for any of you who haven't yet seen those reports that you do go and have a look there. Some excellent resources there. So what I'm going to cover today, I'm going to talk about CDP reporting. I'm going to talk about who is involved. So firstly, I'm going to tell you who CDP is. I'm going to tell you about the stakeholders we work with, both the cities and other stakeholders. And I'm going to tell you about some of the partners that we work with. So some of the other key players involved in the CDP Cities program ecosystem. Then I'm going to move on to talking a little bit about the what of CDP reporting. So I'm going to talk about what CDP can do to support cities. I'm going to talk about what information CDP requests from cities, and show a little bit about some of the differences between the information we'll be requesting this year and information we've requested in the past. Then I'm going to move on to talking about why cities report to CDP, so why we ask cities to do it and what some of the benefits that cities that are reporting are able to access look like. And then finally, I'm going to talk a little bit about how your city could start reporting to CDP if you're one of the 17% of people who isn't currently reporting, or the 50% that isn't sure. I'm not going to spend as much time on this element of the presentation, on the how, because I know that we're very lucky to have representatives from 3 cities who have been reporting to CDP in the past few years, who will speak after me, and who can give you a bit more insight on how they're doing it. So I'm really going to focus on the first 3 points. I've also tried to pitch this so it'll be useful for those of you who have reported to CDP in the past and are familiar, as a bit of a refresher about the kind of work that we do, as well as those of you who are a bit newer to our program. So who's CDP? Well, we're an environmental non-profit. We work globally, and our aim is to secure a thriving economy that works for people and planet. We really believe in information and data as the fundamental basis for action. One of the things that you'll often hear people from CDP saying is you can't manage what you don't measure. So we're really looking at trying to support our stakeholders to measure their environmental impact, and then measure the effectiveness of actions they might be taking to mitigate that impact. Over the past 20 years, CDP has really built up a reputation as kind of an organization with the most comprehensive data set on city and corporate action on climate change, and we are looked to by many players around the world as the gold standard of environmental reporting. Our goal also is to kind of make environmental reporting mainstream, ensure that there is a broader global understanding of environmental impacts caused by real economy actors such as cities and companies and investors. And we work across 3 thematic areas. We work of course, on climate change, but we also look at water security and global forests. So moving on then, just to give you a snapshot of the kind of investors we work with. Of course, we work with cities, and last year in 2019, over 800 cities, I think it was around 830, disclosed environmental information through CDP. But we also work with other stakeholders. So you'll see we work with a large number of investors who are interested in the data we collect to inform their investment decisions. We work with nearly 8,500 companies that respond to another set of questionnaires that we ask them. We also work with large companies who use our environmental data to track how their suppliers are having an impact on the environment and what steps their suppliers may be able to take or may be taking to mitigate those impacts. And I'm excited to say we have just had a regional government in Latin America sign on to CDP as our first government supply chain member. So that should be an interesting case study to watch out for. We also work with over 120 state and regional governments. So that could be anything from provincial government to subnational governments or devolved national governments. So just a quick snapshot then of where the cities, because I know that's the stakeholder that we're most interested in today, where the cities that report to CDP are around the world. And you'll see here in Europe, we have the 2nd highest number of cities reporting to CDP anywhere in the world. There's a lot of interesting data just from the European cities. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the profile of the cities that we work with. So you'll see from this graph that we work with cities of all sizes, but that a large number, or the majority of the cities that we work with have less than 500,000 inhabitants. And I think sometimes when we talk about city-level climate action and how cities are working to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement or other international agreements, the focus can be on, really big cities, capital cities, mega cities like, London, Paris, New York. But actually, we know that cities with less than 1 million inhabitants actually hold more than 50% of global abatement potential for greenhouse gas emissions. So action from cities across all sort of sizes and all different types is really, really vital. And so we at CDP, we try to make sure that our work is as relevant for cities with a lower population as it is for those with much higher populations in the millions. So briefly then, I wanted to show you this slide to give you a sense of all of the different partners that CDP works with. And I won't list them all and explain how we work with each of these organizations, because I could easily spend the full 25 minutes doing so. But we the broad point I want to make here is that we are really trying as an organization to be a sort of one-stop shop for as many people as possible to access city climate data so that we can reduce the burden on city staff and officials of reporting to multiple platforms. And one partner I will mention specifically here is ICLEI Local Governments for Sustainability. Last year, we formed a partnership with ICLEI to develop our reporting system into a joint reporting system that's promoted by both organizations, again with the aim of streamlining the reporting effort for cities and making sure that as many cities as many users as possible were looking at the same data sets. Another partner that I'll talk about just for a little moment, is the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. Many of you may know the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy is a global initiative of nearly 10,000 cities who have committed to taking action on climate change. Cities sign a commitment letter saying that they'll take action on mitigation, adaptation, and in the future, sustainable energy access. Cities that are members of the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy are required by the Global Covenant to report on what action they're taking against the commitments they've made. CDP is one of two reporting platforms that cities can use to report that data, and I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has about that further down the line. So that kind of concludes the who section of this presentation. So I've introduced CDP, I've introduced the cities that we work with, and I've introduced some of our partners. Now I want to focus a little bit on the what. So what CDP can do for your city, and then I'll talk a little bit about the kind of data that we ask you to provide. So first and most importantly, the CDP Cities questionnaire provides a mechanism for cities to measure and monitor progress on climate action year on year. That can be both an internal tool and an external tool. You know, the kinds of questions that we ask give you a really good sense of how your city is doing, whether there are areas where your city isn't currently taking action, where maybe you could look at taking action in future years. But this also, by filling in the questionnaire and providing the data, we're also able to incorporate your city into a kind of global stocktake of what subnational actors or real economy actors like cities, like companies, like investors are doing on climate change. CDP also works to conduct analysis of our data and to find partners, many of the organizations listed on the previous slides, who also conduct analysis so that we can understand, you know, where are some of the gaps. Where are cities struggling to provide data, and why are they struggling to provide data on those areas? You know, is it that there isn't the resource for local authorities to take action in that area? Is it that it's something that requires national government involvement? Things like that. We also, we don't just analyze the gaps, we also look at the data to find best practices, climate actions, examples of innovative actions that others can follow. And, you know, we've already touched on the UBC reports, which have some great examples in them. And then finally, we support cities that are leading on climate action to show that leadership, and we do that in particular through our scoring methodology, which I will talk about in a moment. So what topics are covered by the CDP Cities questionnaire? Well, this will be maybe familiar to some of you, those of you who have reported to CDP in the past. I wanted to talk briefly about the two boxes here that I have put stars next to. So we have asked for a number of years questions about climate hazards and vulnerability. This year, we've added an additional question to that, asking about urban health and thinking about the interconnection between the work that cities may be doing on climate change and responding to climate hazards, and the work that other departments might be doing on urban health. And I think, you know, in this time of global health crisis, this issue has never been more important. That also takes me to another point I wanted to make here, which is that you may, as you look at these different questions, different areas that we ask cities to report data about, you may see that you know, some of them might be outside of the direct remit of your department as an environmental department or an energy department. And we do think that the CDP Cities questionnaire often requires interdepartmental cooperation for cities to answer all of the questions. But that can really be a tool that cities can use as an opportunity to engage colleagues from other departments who may not have climate change as their top priority on the issue of climate change, and to start thinking about how different departments can collaborate with one another. I also wanted to mention our sustainable food systems section. We have changed this section of the questionnaire slightly this year to ask for a little bit more detail on the way that your city may or may not be looking at sustainable food systems as part of your climate action. This is in part in a response to recent science and various reports that have been published that suggest that the food system is a really critical place where we need to take action if we're going to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. Quickly before I move on then, I also wanted to mention something that's not on this slide this year. So in the past, we have asked cities for two types of greenhouse gas emissions inventory, one covering the city's own local operations and one covering citywide emissions. This year, we are in an effort to reduce the reporting effort for cities. We're going to only ask about the citywide emissions greenhouse gas inventories unless you're part of a limited number of initiatives run by ICLEI local governments for sustainability. And we've chosen to focus, of course, on citywide emissions because while it is really vital that local governments understand how their own operations are contributing to climate change, at this stage, if we're going to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement and do what the science demands of us, we need to be thinking bigger and looking at citywide emissions and how cities can work with other stakeholders to reduce emissions across the board. Sorry, I'm struggling to change my slides. So just to give you a bit more information about how we've changed the questionnaire. We do have a document mapping the changes from 2019 to 2020, which is available on our website. It looks a bit like this. Please do feel free to go and have a look if you were involved in the reporting effort last year. We have worked as much as possible this year to limit the changes to the questionnaire. So if your city reported in a previous year, you should be able to use our copy forward function and include any data that hasn't changed in your questionnaire response with relative ease. So I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to skip through this slide and talk a little bit about the why. So why should cities report to CDP? And I think in some of my earlier conversations, I've already touched on this, but just to go into it in a little bit more detail, there are a number of different benefits that cities can gain from disclosing to us. So there's the opportunity to disclose data to our wide network of partners. There is the option to exchange knowledge and best practice with other cities. We run a number of webinars and workshops. This year, we'll be running some webinars specifically on urban health. We'll also be running workshops on city climate finance and hopefully on setting Paris Agreement aligned city level targets at the EU Week of Cities and Regions, which is happening in Brussels in October. And we produce reports and case studies. We also provide a number of services to cities that report to us. So we can do what we call a response check, but we can check through the data that your city has provided before you submit your questionnaire and highlight where there might be gaps or where we might suggest a slightly different approach in answering some of the questions. And then we also provide a call after the data has been submitted, which we normally refer to as a score feedback call, where we talk about your city's response. We talk about the score that you're awarded through the CDP scoring mechanism, which again, I'll talk about in a bit more detail. And we talk about some of the next steps that your city could take to improve your response for next year and to move up through the scoring bands. We also provide opportunities for cities to engage with the private sector. So I noted that we have a number of companies and investors investors in our network. We do have some projects that we're currently working on to try and work with all stakeholders on really holistic changes across the board, but again, in the interest of time, I won't go into that in too much detail. So moving on then, I wanted to very quickly show you what our open data portal looks like. This is the where your data will be displayed if you're a city that reports directly to CDP. We, as you'll see, have cities from around the world, and I know that many cities find this a really useful tool. So the city of Zurich, for example, was recently doing some analysis of other cities' net zero targets and was in touch with us about using the data from the open data portal. I know we're running a little bit behind due to the technical difficulties at the beginning of the webinar, so I won't go into this slide in a lot of detail, but instead I'll talk briefly about our scoring process and then very, very quickly touch on how your city can report data through CDP. So our scoring process provides a kind of really robust review of city responses to the annual questionnaire. We score cities in 4 bands, starting in disclosure, which will get you a D score, moving through awareness, management, and leadership. These scores are private to cities, except for cities that receive an A score. And really, they're an internal tool to allow your city to benchmark where you are on your journey towards taking climate action, and to understand what further steps your city can take. And again, you know, we find, or we've been told by many of the cities we work with, that this can be a really useful internal tool for cities and for sustainability officers in particular to advocate for more action from their leadership. So to talk a bit more about the A list, we, for the past 2 years, have been publishing the names of all the cities on the A list. Last year, we had 105 cities globally that received an A. 34 of those were from Europe and 6 were from UBC, which we're very proud of. And these pictures here are some of our city stakeholders attending the CDP Europe Awards, which is an opportunity to recognize cities, but also companies and investors that are really leading on environmental action, and to provide those stakeholders with a forum to come together and discuss how they might be able to collaborate. I thought I would just quickly show you which of the UBC cities were on the A list last year. I know it's always interesting to see what your peers are doing. And you'll see Lahti and Riga both made it on there. We're going to hear from them later. Hopefully the city of Tartu will also make it on next year. Finally, coming into the how we work, and I'm sorry that we've been a little bit rushed here, just trying to keep us on track so that we can hear from the other speakers as well and still have time for all of your comments. So CDP works on an annual disclosure basis. Every year at the beginning of our reporting cycle, we send cities the copy of our new questionnaire. That will happen early next month at the start of April, probably in the week of the 6th of April this year. Then there's a couple of months where the reporting platform is open for city stakeholders to provide data to CDP. During that period, our team and engagement staff are very much available to answer any questions you might have, to help you with any technical difficulties accessing the platform, and to also talk through the type of data that you might be thinking of reporting and any challenges or opportunities you see there. Once the reporting cycle closes towards the end of the summer, we then go through a process of managing your data. We make it available through the open data portal. We also make it available directly to some of the partners that I talked about earlier. And then at that stage, the bit that's perhaps the most exciting happens. We work with our partners and others to analyze the data and to respond to the needs identified in that analysis with events, advocacy, technical assistance. So some of those pieces that I was mentioning earlier. The goal is that after all of that kind of technical assistance, the score feedback calls, the information we provide on next steps your city could take to move up in the scoring band, your city is able to improve your climate change data, and when we reopen the next year, you're also able to report that, and the cycle starts again. I want to make a little mention of this blue arrow we've put in here. So once your city has reported data, there is an opportunity for the rest of the calendar year to amend that data if you would like to. And cities often make amendments in response to feedback from partners. So in response to feedback you may receive about whether the data reported is sufficient to meet your commitments to the Global Covenants of Mayors, for example. Last year, we were the data platform for the World Wildlife Fund's One Planet City Challenge, and we also provided an opportunity for cities to amend data submitted with their entries into that competition run by WWF. That's a competition that happens every 2 years, so it won't be taking place this year, but hopefully will be taking place again in 2021. So very quickly, just wanted to show you this. So every city that reports to CDP will receive an individual activation link and login to access our online city. And once you click that link and you log in, you'll see your city's dashboard, which has kind of all the information that you need about your city and your interaction with CDP. You can, by clicking this circled button, confirm your participation, and that will take you through to the cities questionnaire, the 2020 cities questionnaire. In addition to the questions in the questionnaire, we have a guidance document that has a lot of quite detailed guidance, question by question, to help you to understand why the question is relevant, what type of data you might need to answer that question, what are some of the kind of best practices and methodologies that cities can use to answer those questions. And then I also thought I would just highlight quickly this export function. So you can export the guidance so that you can use it and work offline. We also have export functions to allow you to export the questionnaire itself in Word and Excel, so that you can work on that offline. And we can have multiple users from a city collaborating on the city's response at any given time. So as I mentioned earlier, we find cross-departmental cooperation to be a really important element for cities to fill in the questionnaire, and you can invite colleagues from other departments to actually work with you on the response. So hopefully I didn't run over too much there. Thank you very much for listening. I see in the chat that someone's asking whether we can share this presentation. Absolutely, we can. I also, before handing on to the other speakers, just wanted to take this opportunity to note my own contact details, but also those of my colleague Etienne Mette, who I believe is on this call as a participant. Etienne has recently joined us as the engagement manager for city, states and regions in Europe, and would be very happy to answer any questions anybody has or set up time to talk with you about how your city could participate in the questionnaire this year. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the Q&A session later.
All right, thank you, Catherine, for an informative presentation. Now it's time to hear about the best practices from our UBC member cities. We would like to welcome Eira Rosberg, the Sustainable Development Coordinator from the city of Lahti, with the keynote Lahti, the European Green Capital 2021. Welcome, Eira.
Hello, and greetings from Lahti region. So I'm working home, and is there? Yes, there is a possibility to share the screen. I will show some slides. So I work as a sustainable development coordinator, and lots of environmental reporting and climate work, and also climate reporting, also climate calculations are on my work list. But Lahti is a Finnish medium-sized city, so we have about 120,000 inhabitants. We are located in southern Finland. In our strategy, we want to be a bold environmental city, and we have applied many times to become European Green Capital, and finally we were chosen by the European Commission. There were 12 indicators like water and sustainable land use and waste and biodiversity and climate mitigation, climate adaptation, and so on. And the reporting or the reporting, of course, you have to have, and good application is very essential. That one we learned while applying many times. But here are some highlights of our actions. Last year, Lahti closed its heat and power plant that was mainly using the coal. And this had and will have huge impact in our greenhouse gas emissions. We are using now gasification plant and wood for thermal heating. Also wood waste, so not so much virgin wood. I must point out we have very ambitious goal to become carbon neutral in 2025. This means we will reduce the greenhouse gas emissions by 80% from 1990 level. And there you can see how big impact this closing this coal heat and power plant will have in our emission, that black bar. But becoming carbon neutral, that is not enough. Then we are planning more actions and doing more actions, and also we just did carbon sink and carbon offsetting plan. So we want to enhance our carbon sinks in our land use, in wooden buildings and so on. And then the offsetting is the last option. I must say, when targeting to become carbon neutral, the calculation method means a lot. So we are using production-based calculation method, that is Lahti geographical area, the greenhouse gas emissions from the production in that area. We are calculating it in CO2 equivalents, and of course the comparison year is very important, but we are using the old one, 1990 still. Even some other base years are also used in Finland and in Europe. But what after 25? This production-based calculation and production-based carbon neutrality is not enough. We have already started to look at our consuming based emissions. So we had a pilot project this winter called 1.5 degree lifestyle. And we had 79 families trying that kind of lifestyle and what kind of obstacles there are. So definitely after 25, we have to start doing different kinds of calculations. The production-based calculations are not good enough, and we have started that work already. After the closing of the coal heat and power plant, the transport is the biggest emission sector. And we have this quite innovative project related to urban mobility and sustainable mobility. It's called CityCap, and it's a phone application. And it's a carbon trading application, and it's first one in the world related to urban mobility. For example, you have your personal cap every week, so it's calculated per week. And if you get lower than your personal cap, then you can earn some money worth prizes. And also the price of the carbon changes every week because it's dependent on how other people are going around. So the habits of other users has an effect. So it's quite interesting, and there is a university is part of this, so we will get some real research data and also how people behave and that kind of research. Then we have this quite unique prize-winning way of doing our strategical master planning. So it's in 4-year cycle. Then that allows different focus every round. So this round we have had a sustainable mobility, one of the very core issues, and also storm waters, so climate adaptation. Citizen participation is very wide, and especially this master planning process. We have collected lots of citizen participation data, and it is collected to the same GIS system as all physical and environmental data we are collecting. So, and part of the data is open, but mostly it's for officers, and all urban planners can use the same data. So it's another layer in the GIS system. For example, we had a query. There was a Maptionnaire query in the internet and 4 events in shopping malls. So we got 6,500 markings on a map, different kinds of markings and statements. But for example, we collected these positive places and negative places. And all the data is then put in the GIS. And wide amount of additional data has been collected with the master planning process. For example, carbon sinks and carbon storages in Lahti region. And it is also stored and used from the same GIS platform or the database. Also children were participating, and also children or we collected the information from forests nearby kindergartens and schools. We have also different types of environmental awareness rising. This is an environmental educator working and taking school children to the forest, and they make some science there. But we also have a work form called environmental grandparents, which is part of volunteering work. And then the elderly people can have a like nominated kindergarten where they can visit every once in a while and talk about environmental issues that are important for them. Of course, we do nature conservation work, and this is one example of eels protection. So we have or had eels in our waterways, but there are some water power plants, so they cannot go spawning to Sargasso Sea anymore, because there are also very old these water power plants. But we, together with other municipalities and nature conservationists, we collect those spawning eels and then give them a truck ride to the Baltic Sea, where they can continue past the Denmark and to the Atlantic Ocean. And they have actually marked some of those eels, so they know that they will actually swim there. Lahti has been reporting to CDP since 2015, and last year we got this A listing, and of course important part is that we have the climate targets in our strategy. We have all those risk and vulnerability assessments done, adaptation plan, many actions in climate mitigation. But I must state out that also filling the form or making a good application is very important. Like we learned in applying the European Green Capital, it's a little bit same here, that you have to do some effort and give some time for the reporting. So that's why you will get a better reporting for the CDP, and it's partly because of that we got the A listing. Also, we got help from CDP, a little bit tips that it's really worth doing the good reporting. So next year it will be a big year for still quite small city Lahti, and our targets for the European Green Capital year are contributing the well-being, and we want to be a sustainable city, and we want to make this green capital visibility. So also the communications is very essential part of the climate work. So thank you.
Thank you, Eira. And once more, our biggest congratulations to Lahti for becoming the CDP's A-lister, as well as for becoming the European Green Capital 2021. We will be so excited to look forward to what happens next year. Thank you once more.
Thank you.
All right, let us continue. So we will be having our next presenter from the city of Tartu, Jaanus Tamm. He's a project manager, but he is also one of our advisory board members. So welcome, Jaanus. I will give you the rights in a
Hello, good morning,
second.
everyone.
There you
Yeah.
go.
Yes.
Mic is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, as Christina said, my name is Jaanus Tamm and I'm representing today Tartu City in this webinar. And I will shortly and briefly introduce how and why we came on CDP reporting and what kind of benefits we got from this reporting and from this disclosure. To be honest, Catherine previously presented most of things what I wanted to highlight today, so I think my task it is a little bit easier today. And by the CDP rating, we are still on level C at the moment. It means that we have some room for developments and some steps to go to be in same level as Lahti or Riga or some other cities. But we are willing to do that. Some words for background. Tartu City is positioning itself as a green city, and it means that green city in physical and mentally as well. Our long-term vision is that all activities or planned activities must be planned in such a way that they will not harm anybody, including environment and living beings. We are very proud of our university, and we are considering the city of Tartu as a smart city, and already from 1532 when the university was established. And Tartu is the second largest city in Estonia, located in the southern part of Estonia and also the regional center. We have almost 100,000 inhabitants in the city. Some years a little bit less, some years a little bit more, but it has been in this way maybe already 20 years or more. Now coming to reporting of energy data. For us, energy issues came more actual in 2014. It means that our history in this field is not very long, and our experience is also maybe not so deep and so good. But we are active and we are willing to reach a lot. These are our main goals set in 2014. In this year, our mayor signed the Covenant of Mayors, and then we started to compile our first Sustainable Energy Action Plan. Our first aims were to decrease energy consumption and CO2 emissions in the city by 20%, and to increase use of renewable energy sources by 20% up to 2020. Maybe these goals are not very high, but I wanted to highlight a point here that our reference year is 2010, not 1990, but 2010. In that sense, I think our goals are a little bit higher than seems. But yes, our first sustainable energy action plan was also submitted and approved by City Council in 2015. And when we made our first midterm report or analysis, what we have seen. Our indicators have moved mainly in undesirable direction and quite heavily. As you see, the energy consumption and the CO2 emissions have risen a lot. Not decreased by 20%, but increased around 20%. What was good that the share of renewable energy sources in energy mix will also rise and quite good. So having these first results, we made first analysis what was happened and what's going on. And what we saw in this, thanks to this analysis was that mainly the rise in energy use and in carbon emissions was coming from private sector, especially from private companies. And we also recognized that we need to rearrange our monitoring system and also all our approach to energy issues, and we need to find another way how to be more efficient and more aware what's going on and why it's going on in such way. Just for remark, that the city government itself, as a municipality, was performed very well. We decreased our CO2 emissions and energy usage as planned and a little bit more, and also increased usage of renewable energy sources as well. But yes, our programs were lying in private sector. I can't say that we are not engaging private sector in our plans and in our activities. Engagement basically is a very important part of our daily policy and daily activities. But we saw that this is not working in this way what we planned, and we need to have some kind of innovation here to change the speech and to change state of our city. And some more. Until this time, the climate change was not, to be honest, not a serious issue in Tartu, because we don't feel it. But already already in 2017. It became more actual, and we had during last year's in this time already quite heavy rainfalls, which were not very usual historically, and also it became first hot islands in very hot summer days, which was something new for us. It means that we needed to also pay a lot of attention to climate change, the adoption of climate change, and this is a topic we needed to consider in our next plans and in our approach to energy planning. So, and then in 2017, we looked around and to find more tools to disclose our energy data and our energy activities and energy plans and we already reported our energy data in government of mayors system, but we needed to have more coverage and to show more actively what we are doing and what are our aims. Also to our local and regional stakeholders, but more widely in Europe as well. And then we found CDP reporting, and why we like this reporting is that this is quite comprehensive approach in this reporting. It's sets quite good frames for monitoring of our energy activities and also climate adoption actions. It makes it easier to assess possible hazards, and there are many benefits in this system. And one maybe also maybe most important thing is that in this reporting system are gathered not only public entities, I mean municipalities or regional governments and so on, but also private entities, companies, and this gives a much clearer picture what's going on in world, in region, in country also. And the system is quite flexible, and what we like also is that these questionnaires will be updated with every year based on feedback from participants, and it means that this system is accurate, and it's good to follow. CDP disclosure and disclosure at all is like a two-way traffic, and it's great benefit. From one hand, you can monitor your state and your situation and your development, but from other hand, you can give feedback to different actors. I mean, regional or national governments, or local public, or EU politicians, or so on. It's quite a big circle of different stakeholders who can follow and see what's going on. And
Okay, I guess we have to interrupt you.
yeah,
We have Jurijs still, unfortunately, to come online. But if you can say a quick word to.
okay, but yeah, finally, what I want to conclude is that thanks to this reporting system, we designed our new some kind of energy reporting approach, and that's good. And also I encourage all cities and also the private sector to do this reporting, because it's a part of all of us. This is very important, and the more we have data, the more we can have quality analysis and so on. But thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you once more, and let's hope that will make it to get a better score. We'll get to the A-list soon as well.
Yeah, we hope so. Thank you.
All right, let's continue. We still have Jurijs waiting, so I will already give Jurijs the right. There you go. All right, so welcome Jurijs from City of Riga, and he will be presenting us the presentation on Disclosing Environmental Data, City of Riga's Practical Experience. Unfortunately, we cannot hear you right now. You are muted. Now we gave you the microphone rights. There you go.
Okay, can you see us?
Yes, we can see you and hear you. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So good day, everyone. Webinar participants, my name is Jurijs Grizans and my colleague is Gunārs Ruskuls, and we represent Riga City Council City Development Department. And it's our pleasure today to present experience of the City of Riga in environmental data collection and reporting to the CDP. And within our presentation, we would like first of all briefly to introduce to Riga City experience in reporting to CDP. After that, we would like to present some process of data collection and reporting to CDP. Finally, also to present the main challenges that we have faced in data collection and reporting to CDP. Can you hear well?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So, first question, why do we report to CDP? It's necessary to mention that one of the long-term development objectives of the City of Riga, defined in Sustainable Development Strategy of Riga until 2030, is to ensure that City of Riga has convenient, safe and pleasant urban environment. And actually it's about making a City of Riga better for everyone. In order to achieve this goal, Riga City Municipality places a strong emphasis on measuring adaptation to climate change. It's necessary to mention that City of Riga has been working on collection and disclosing environmental data for many years. And over time, environmental data reporting to CDP has become an important part of this work. And the main milestones of our activities are the following. Already in 2008, to support implementation of the European Union 40% greenhouse gas reduction target by 2030, City of Riga committed to the Covenant of the Mayor for Climate and Energy. In 2010, to create a governance tool for efforts to achieve climate adaptation targets, the Riga City Municipality developed Riga Smart City Sustainable Energy Action Plan for 2010 and 2020. and already in 2012, to centralize all environmental data and to track climate adaptation progress, City of Riga started to report to the CDP. In 2014, as a follow-up to the first Riga Smart City Sustainable Energy Action Plan, Municipality of City developed Riga Smart City Sustainable Energy Action Plan for 2014 and 2020. And also in 2017, to provide regular measure of climate adaptation progress, City of Riga continued to report to the CDP. In 2018, City Development Department started to collect disclosing environmental data and report to CDP. And in 2018, after submission of report, results were scored and we got C awareness level. But already in 2019, after submission, we scored and we got A leadership level. And finally, in 2019, also to ask the European Council and European Union member states to step up the European Union's climate movements, the City of Riga joined 210 European cities call for a more sustainable and equitable European future. The second part, how do we collect data and how do we report to the CDP? For environmental data collection and reporting to CDP, we use 5 steps approach. And so step number 1, we call it to start. The process usually begins with an email that we receive from CDP about an availability of CDP questionnaire and guidance. In City Development Department, we have 4 staff members that are responsible for environmental data collection and reporting. So together with the colleagues, we read CDP Cities Questionnaire, CDP Cities Reporting Guidance, and CDP Cities Questionnaire Change. After that, we go to the step number 2, and we call it to discuss. Together with the colleagues, we organize kick-off meeting, and in a form of discussion, we make an overview file of CDP questionnaire. And we organize information in this overview file in the following manner. Column number 1 will make a list of CDP questionnaire section. Column number 2, we make a list of CDP questionnaire questions. Column number 3, we try to define source of information. Actually, by area of responsibility and activity, we identify internal and external stakeholders, or we call them holders of information for each CDP questionnaire section and question as well. And if we are talking about stakeholders, it's necessary to mention that we have internal and external. As an internal, we can say it's the Riga City Council Welfare Department, Education, Culture and Sports Department, Housing and Environment Department, Municipal Agency, Riga Energy Agency, and Municipal Company, Riga's Water. And we have 1 external stakeholder, and it's Central Statistical Bureau of Latvia. If we are talking about the proportion of what we can do by ourselves and what we need to ask our stakeholders, the share of input varies. So in some section, for example, introduction, governance and data management, opportunities, adaptation, as you can see, yes, we can collect and we can respond totally for 100% by ourselves. In some section, for example, food, energy, transport, climate hazards and vulnerability, so we need to ask stakeholders to help and we need to ask for their input. And this input varied from 25% till 67%. But there is also the third option that, for example, as for the section as water security or waste, or for example, citywide emission, yes, we need help of our internal or external stakeholders almost for 100%. So after we finish the step number 2, we go to the step number 3. After internal and external stakeholders of information are identified, we make a phone conversation with them, and after that we write and send them an information request letters. And usually reply deadline is 15 calendar days. After that we go to the step number 4, and we call the step to respond. So we export CDP questionnaire to Word and start to respond to the relevant questions using CDP online reporting guidance. So we do it by ourselves. After we receive necessary information from internal and external stakeholders, we incorporate it into questionnaire Word file. And finally, after CDP questionnaire file has been completed, we make final review using 4I principle. It means that the final version of the questionnaire Word file must be reviewed and approved by at least 2 people. And this approach allows us to ensure effective control and monitoring of the final result. And finally, after CDP questionnaire Word file has been reviewed and approved by at least 2 people, it is submitted for acceptance to the head of Strategic Management Board. And finally, we are at the step number 5, and we call it to submit. After acceptance of the final version of CDP questionnaire by the head of Strategic Management Board, we submit Riga City response using CDP's online response system. And finally, I would like to tell you what challenges are we facing. Okay, it's necessary to mention, like everything new, environmental data collection and reporting to CDP can face challenges. The main challenges that we have faced during the previous years are the following. Challenge number 1, to understand correctly the amount of data and information required for CDP reporting. When we were responded to CDP questionnaire for the first time, we were challenging to find out how much information we need to collect and to prepare. Why was it? First of all, there are more than 80 questions in CDP questionnaire, and there are different types of questions. We are talking about open-ended questions, yes or no, close-ended questions, multiple choice questions, etc. And secondly, questions are interrelated, and some of them arise from other questions. Challenge number 2 that we have faced, to understand correctly type of data and information required for CDP reporting. And again, when we responded to the CDP questionnaire for the first time, we were challenging to find out what type of information exactly we need to collect and to prepare. Why was it? Because there are more than 10 different topic sections of questions, for example, governance, climate adaptation, energy, transport, food, etc. And of course, each of the sections requires thematic focus and different sources of information. Challenge number 3 that we have faced, to understand correctly all stakeholders that need to be involved for CDP reporting. And again, when we responded to the CDP questionnaire for the first time, we were challenging to identify correctly the main internal and external stakeholders, as well as the data and information they have. And finally, the challenge number 4, to understand correctly time resources necessary for CDP reporting. Here we are talking about, from one side, about the time framework created by CDP, and usually, as we know, it's 3 months, April, May, and June. But from another side, about the time that is necessary to implement all 5 steps of data collection and reporting that I have mentioned before: to start, to discuss, to ask, to respond, and to submit. And of course, it's necessary to consider that the process of environmental data collection and reporting to CDP usually cover the end of spring and the beginning of summer. So it means Easter holidays, Labor Day, some other national holidays, as well as the beginning of summer vacation season. That may have somehow an impact on the duration of all necessary tasks in time. So these are briefly our challenges that we have faced. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Jurijs. I was very delighted to hear from your experience from City of Riga. Wonderful. I hope that your approach will clear up the CDP reporting procedure to other cities as well in UBC. So thank you for sharing that with us. I think that was a real best practice here. But now, as we continue on, we will quickly launch the last poll for our participants, and then we will go on to questions and answers. We don't have more than 5 minutes left to the original end time, but if you don't mind, we can go a little bit over so we can have a short discussion. But now the poll is open. Please give your votes. Now we can see the results. Yes, good. 30% of you think that your city will disclose to CDP in the future. 60%, or the majority, will hope so, that your city will disclose to CDP in the future, and 10% of you don't know. And thankfully, there was no answer. Thank you, Jutta, for showing us the poll. So now it's the time to move on to the questions and answers section. I would invite all the panelists and our keynote speakers to turn on their webcams and their microphones. And all the participants, we encourage you to send in your questions to the cities and to CDP if you have any. But we will start with one question that will be addressed to all of you, so you will be able to answer one by one. So the question goes, what in your opinion would be a good motivation for cities to start CDP reporting? And we would start with Catherine.
Oh, interesting. Well, I would be really interested to hear the other participants' answers, the other panelists' answers to this question. I've talked a lot about the different motivations, the different benefits of disclosure today. I think for me, the sort of overwhelming reason why I'm excited to work with cities reporting to CDP is because we are in a time of climate crisis, and I think that you know, we really need to come together and to understand that. And climate change is not an issue that we can tackle without everybody working together. And I think that reporting data and being part of a global initiative, trying to work together to advance collective action goals is a really effective way to start taking that action and to understand what they might need to do on climate change. So that would be my number one reason.
Okay, good. Then we move on to Jurijs and Gunther. What do you think would be the good motivation for the cities?
I think that the main motivation is that city environmental data collection reporting gives a good opportunity to start to think about climate adaptation mitigation activities. It's a good opportunity to start to collect all the latest information. And also, I think this CDP reporting provides an opportunity to analyze what you have done before. What is your, for example, for your opportunities for the future? What are you doing right now? But what you can do, some steps in the future as well. I think it's a good starting point to collect data and to start to analyze your activities and to plan your future steps. That's it.
Didn't hear
Jaanus,
you.
what about you? What do you think?
I think it's very important to be visible, and also for cities to see where is your position, where you are positioned, and as Jurijs mentioned, I think it's very important that you need to find a good methodology, how to monitor your energy performance and your CO2 emissions. In that sense, it's very, very good to do so.
Okay, thank you. And Eira, what do you think is a good motivation for UBC cities too?
Oh, we can't hear you, Eira.
Yeah, you seem to be muted. Okay,
so
now you.
I kept muting myself maybe again and again. But I think back in 2015, when Lahti started reporting in CDP, it was maybe like more internal. Of course, comparison to other cities was important, but the internal reasons, because the CDP made it very clear how important the adaptation measures are. And before that, we had mainly concentrated on climate change mitigation. But then the CDP reporting forced us to concentrate also the adaptation reporting. So that was the benefit of this. Why maybe it was not why we started, but it was a benefit after starting reporting there.
Okay, that was a good question. Good answer to a good question. So let's continue with a couple more questions. So what do you see as the biggest obstacle to start CDP reporting for a city? So I don't know if Catherine wants to share her opinion, but we could ask from the cities as well.
I think let's ask from the cities. You know, they're on the side of this, and I'm sure have encountered obstacles in the past.
Let's hear from Jurijs, please. What were the hardest part?
Actually, I think maybe the hardest part is maybe it's the beginning to realize, yes, how big is this question area? How much information do you need? How to organize all these activities, and how to start to do it? As I have mentioned, quite often when you start to do something new for the first time, you have a lot of challenges. But I think that also maybe from our own experience, after just 1 year experience, these challenges just go away. And right now, yes, we try to use a systemic approach more.
Good. Okay. What about Tartu?
I think it's a quite hard thing. This is to engage politicians and also public. It's not easy thing. I don't mean only workshops or such things, but I mean how to raise awareness of public, and this is quite crucial. And also for us, it was very hard to find proper data, and this data management and this part is still not perfect by now, but we are working quite hardly to get better as a system, and to be able to monitor basically in real time your situation is our aim, and this is what we are working at the moment. Yeah.
Okay, good. What about Lahti?
I must say it's a resource problem maybe for small and medium-sized cities, because in Lahti it's mainly just me, and this is and environmental reporting is only one part, small part of my work. So finding the time and finding the resources, but that Jurijs' speech was very good, so I got tips. Maybe I shouldn't be doing that so much just by myself. So maybe involving more people. So yeah, so resources is an obstacle.
Okay, it's good to know all our relevant points that you brought out, all cities. I think that is something that we will have to address now with the second part of our questions and answers session that focus on sharing the best tips to a city, UBC city that is maybe this year starting to disclose for the first time. What is the one concrete tip that you will give to that city? And from Jurijs, if you can start.
Yes.
What is the one concrete thing?
One concrete thing is to try, as I mentioned also, to try to use a systemic approach for this data collection and reporting, and actually try, for example, to make a folder and try doing all year to collect all information that somehow is related with environmental data. So through the year and trying to collect this data, it will help you when this date of the CDP reporting will come. So you will have the quantity of information, so you can go through and you can choose for each section and for each question it can help you. So I think step by step, but try to work a little bit during all year, and it will help you maybe to do all in time and to get maybe more success during the three months of preparing and reporting.
Thank you. That was a really good answer. What about Jaanus?
I recommend to be as public as possible and spread information and to engage private sector as much as possible. It makes things later a lot of easier.
Thank you. Eira?
And maybe involving politicians or having a political decision that we will do this. That will give some kind of backbone. And of course, second tip, you don't have to be perfect for the first time. So.
Yeah, I would definitely stress that we don't anticipate that the first time a city reports, they will be able to report, against 100% of the questions. I mean, maybe, but we would be surprised. It is a journey, and that's the way that the scoring system is set up, to kind of recognize that you start with just the fact of disclosing at all and move forwards. And I think, it's been really interesting for me to hear from all of you about the kind of questions with engaging different stakeholders, because, one of the things that we do really hope is that the CDP Cities questionnaire and the reporting process is an opportunity for staff in maybe the environmental department or the energy department that think and grapple with these issues all the time to go out and talk to colleagues who maybe don't think of climate change or environmental issues as the first thing that's involved in their work, but nonetheless, who are going to be vital to actually ensuring a transition to a low carbon economy. So yeah, it's been great to hear all of you and your reflections on those pieces.
Right, thank you all. And if you have any questions that you would like to ask right now from each other, or from Catherine, or Catherine would like to address some of our keynote cities. So now's the chance to ask away. We still have a few more minutes to spare.
Well, I suppose so it's been really great kind of talking to all of you and getting your perspective on CDP reporting. And we've talked a bit about what you would say is the sort of benefit to a city disclosing for the first time. But I guess I would ask, what is the thing that you find you personally in your current role have found most useful with the reporting process? And then a second question, kind of adding on to that, which is that, if there was something that you would ask us to do differently, what would it be?
In my opinion, answering on the first question, especially, and I think especially as for the first year, that maybe some questions, yes, create some difficulties. But after that also, and also after discussion with the colleagues, I have realized that CDP questionnaire is quite universe, and it's also oriented to the metropolis area, to the large cities, to the small towns, etc. So actually, I have learned from this that you do not afraid from the questions, but just try to fit CDP question exactly to your city boundaries, exactly to your environmental data collection practice, and exactly to your environmental data reporting practice as well. It's answer to the first question, and to the second, I will try maybe to organize somehow this process a little bit different, because, for example, for the first time when I was responsible for doing this, I think we start to do it at the end of May somehow, yes, and it was submission I think in the middle of June or at the end of June. So it was necessary to do it quickly, and it was necessary to find out any information quickly. Yes, actually, I think the answer somehow, but to organize and to try maybe to do it during all the year, as I have mentioned, to keep to try to collect and to do step by step, so you know that this time will come. You just reserve these 3 months. And so you are trying just maybe to summarize all activities that you have done during the year.
Yeah, really, really interesting feedback. And of course, I will take it on board where we can.
What about Jaanus?
I think it's important to do as much as you can, and don't be afraid. You can do next time more, and just think about your shortcomings and try to improve them. And I think this is important to such a continuous development, and nobody is perfect, in my opinion.
Okay, Eira.
For the future, I think the connection between European Covenant of Mayors and this CDP cities must be thought better way, because we are reporting our Covenant of Mayors through CDP, but then Covenant of Mayors office was totally unaware of our climate actions, and it was very frustrating, because I thought that yes, this time I don't have to report 2 systems, only 1 system, but then they are not really talking to each other.
Well, that's a really interesting issue to raise. I actually had a meeting with the EU Covenant Secretariat yesterday to talk about how we're going to address that problem. And I think we have kind of come up with some better approaches to sharing data between us. Yeah, I appreciate that has been a kind of slower process that I think we all had hoped when we initially decided that we would, make it possible to report through either system. But definitely something that we're tackling now and hoping to really try and streamline for the coming year. So thanks for raising that, Eira.
Okay, thank you. So if none of you have any other questions, I think it's about time to close the webinar. Are there any more questions? No?
No, just thank you very much, Christina, for hosting us and moderating today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you. And I would like to apologize for all the technical issues that we experienced. But once more, thank you, our city representatives, and Catherine. Thank you, all the participants, for joining. And we would like to welcome you back next time, because the UBC Talks is a monthly webinar. And the next one will be coming on 28th of April on the topic of stormwater management. So please, registration is open now, so you can register, and we'll see you then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.